Steelers and Browns. Vish, what are your initial thoughts on this one? They just played week 17 and it was close. We know there was the COVID outbreak in the facility of the Browns. Tough for them.
Yeah. So one, I think the Browns got screwed. Like Kevin Stefanski not even being able to call in and call plays for this game is brutal. It's absolutely brutal. I think that the NFL, though they had a set of rules, I think they should make some adjustments because it's a playoff. It's the playoffs. You want to give every team the best opportunity to win in spite of these different circumstances that we're living in. And, I just think that the NFL should accommodate Cleveland just to ensure that you get the best possible game. But yeah, I think that I just wanted to touch on that. Ultimately, I think Pittsburgh is going to pull this out. Pittsburgh is a veteran team. They're very physical. They're very well coached by Mike Tomlin. I think they're going to be physical, disciplined, and they're going to be ready to play playoff football. I think it's a big deal that the Browns made it to the playoffs, but I'm not sure if they're ready to win a playoff game without their head coach. They're a very young team. They're a growing team. I think there's a lot to get into with the matchup because I think it is an interesting matchup. Can Pittsburgh stop the run bootleg game? Super interesting. Let's see what they do to stop that. And then on the other side, can Pittsburgh push the ball down the field or even run the ball? Because just throwing a million short passes with Big Ben is just a recipe to make Juju take a couple more Corvette hits from Von Bell. So we'll see. we'll see with their offense, but ultimately, I think again picking against a Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame head coach in the playoffs always hard, especially when they're at home. And just like Seattle, I'm going to pick Pittsburgh to prevail.
Yeah, and with that, so we mentioned Stefanski, but there's also just a ton of other key starters for them that aren't able to play. Two of the most notable being Denzel Ward and Joel Bitonio. So
both are out.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's just I don't know. I feel bad for the Browns. 2020 treated them so well. The moment, the year passes, 2021, you get all the COVID outbreak, back to being the same old Browns, it looks like. Yeah, I'm kind of sad because we saw what happened last week in week 17. It was a 2-point game. The Steelers were playing Mason Rudolph, and Josh Dobbs was coming in a couple times for some reason. I couldn't tell you, but they had other key starters on. They kept it very competitive. And I was surprised. I think a lot of people thought that the Browns would, kind of just run the ball down their throats and just take them out pretty much because they were missing a lot of guys on both ends. But they really weren't able to. And the Steelers had some semblance of an offense. They scored 22, failed the onside, but I mean, they just played this team closely, hardly lost. They get all their starters back, and the Browns are starting to miss a bunch of starters. And this game's just not set up for Baker to succeed. And I feel if Baker doesn't have the necessary pieces in place, he can't take a team over the top like the top quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar can do.
Yeah, I agree with that on Baker, though I don't think this is really a fair game to evaluate him.
No, I'm with
because
you.
The circumstances are just so impossible and there's just so much stacked against them. I don't put that much stock into what happened week 17 just because the Browns were playing with so much pressure and the Steelers were playing with house money. So for me, I kind of let that game slide. Ultimately, just hearing now, I didn't realize that Denzel Ward isn't playing. That's huge.
There's other guys too.
Right, and I think underratedly, Denzel Ward has been a top 10 corner this season. I think he's been really phenomenal, and nobody really talks about it because he's been in and out of the lineup. But when he's played, he's been fantastic. And then Joel Bitonio is one of the better guards in the NFL. And if you were going to give the Browns any advantage, you would say, well, I'd hope that their offensive line can just dominate this game. And maybe Stefanski's got a couple creative runs on how they want to run against Pittsburgh, and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt run all over them. But losing Joel Bitonio is a pretty big loss.
Yeah.
Browns have had a great season, but I think it comes to an end. Unfortunate that there were circumstances here out of their control, but.
And I also feel they kind of peaked a little too early almost. Everyone was talking about maybe they could win the AFC North. They were on a hot streak, right? and then all of a sudden they lost to the New York Jets. What? And then, they had that thriller against the Ravens. That was awesome. They looked amazing. Then they just played a close game with the Steelers, right? So they kind of peaked a little early in the year as opposed to some teams like the Bills, the Packers, the Ravens. Those teams are all like catching fire, catching steam as of now. I think the Bills are kind of more on a downslope than on an upslope, if anything. So I'm more sad that the matchup between a fully healthy and fully being able to coach Browns versus like fully healthy and coach Steelers is taken away from us, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. So finally,